Senate will come to order. Senator Murphy. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. I impose a call of the Senate.
Senate is under call. Senator Murphy.
Madam President, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and that the Sergeant-at-Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
Members, please stand for the prayer. What? I'm sorry. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails. Please stand for the prayer. And following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Today's chaplain is the Reverend Martin Erickson from Como Park Lutheran Church in St. Paul.
As you heard, I'm Martin Erickson from Como Park Lutheran Church, where we're celebrating our 100th anniversary this coming weekend. Let us pray. God of mercy, grace, and love, bless all those assembled here today. Fill them with compassion and resolve to care for this state's natural, fiscal, and human resources. Inspire them to lift up the dignity of every person, the aged, ill, and young. Use those gathered here today to strengthen our institutions of learning and productivity and make them role models for our children and our children's children. All this we ask for your dear sake. In the name of our God we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Barr, Bolden, Carlson, Champion, Clark, Coleman, Swadzinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Drazkowski, Duckworth, Farnsworth, Fateh, Frentz, Green, Grunhagen, Gustafson, Hochschild, Herr, Heinzmann, Hemmingson-Jaeger, Hoffman, Holmstrom, Housley, Howe, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson-Stewart, Klein, Coran, Kroon, Kunish, Kupek, Lang, Latz, Liskey, Limmer, Lucero, Mann, Marty, Matthews, Mayquaid, McEwen, Miller, Mohammed, Murphy, Nelson, Verbaten, Pappas, Pa, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rasmussen, Rest, Seeberger, Utke, Weber, Wiesenberg, Westland, Westrom, Wiklund, Zhang.
A quorum is present. The following members intend to vote from a remote location under Rule 40.7. Proceeding to, oh, I'm sorry, I need to say their names. Senator Carlson and Senator Champion. Proceeding to the second order of business, executive and official communications. The following communication was received. Please make a note. No action is required. The fifth order of business, reports of committees. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the committee reports printed in the agenda be adopted with the exception of the reports pertaining to Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 6.
On the adoption of the committee reports, all in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The sixth order of business, second reading of Senate bills. The Senate Secretary will read the Senate file number.
Senate File Number 203.
Senate file has been given its second reading. Seventh order of business, the second reading of House bills. Secretary will read the House file number.
House File Numbers 2358, 3453, 3593, 3676, 3762, 3769, 3782, 3827, and 4133.
The House files have been given their second reading. The eighth order of business, introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed on today's introductions calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated with the following let me find it. With the following exception, there's a change on page 1. Senate File 5200 is referred to Rules and Administration. The ninth order of business, motions and resolutions. We will adopt the authors of motions as one motion. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Senate File 4390, number 60 on general orders, be stricken and re-referred to the Committee on Finance.
All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Opposed, say no. The motion prevails and the reference is made. Senate Resolution number 79 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration. Where's Senator Klein? Oh.
Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Agricultural, Veterans, Broadband, and Rural Development and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026, be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn. And Mr. President, that includes confirmations for the Board of Animal Health, the Department of Veterans Affairs Commissioner, and the Minnesota Rural Finance Authority.
Discussion on the motion of Senator Putnam. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'd like to roll call the motion.
Roll call requested and granted. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Putnam, for bringing the confirmation issue forward here and sending it back to committee. I know this is a procedural vote on this, but Senator Putnam, would you please yield for a question?
Senator Putnam will yield. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Putnam, do you plan on having confirmation hearings on any of those on the list this year as we near the end of session?
Senator Putnam.
Mr. President, thank you, Senator Johnson, for the question. That is not within the scope of our work at this point, given the calendar and where we are right now for those specific positions.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Putnam, for that. And Senator Putnam, I know a number of these that are on the list that we're looking at today have been there for some maybe close to 4 years, that have been in these positions and have not been confirmed at any point in their term in their service. So, Senator Putnam, why have these commissioners or these appointees not been held to the confirmation process over that term?
Senator Putnam will yield. Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Johnson. I can say from my experience working with all of these individuals that they are serving admirably, and I have no questions about the quality of their service. We've been committing to other elements of our labor over the past year and simply have not prioritized this because of the tremendous quality of the individuals who've been serving the Board of Animal Health, the great work of Commissioner Brad Lindsay at MDVA, and our friends in the Rural Finance Authority.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Putnam. And probably on a lot of these, we would agree with you on that. And a lot of these confirmations would be things that we bring to committee, have that opportunity to really highlight the service that these appointees are providing to our state and to our constituents across the state. That's an opportunity that we have been denied in the Minnesota Senate for, in many cases, up to 4 years. This is an opportunity for us to make sure that we are giving our approval for those folks that are in the job doing the work. We don't have that idea of what is going on right now. We haven't had that exposure to what they're doing, what their jobs are, how they're performing in that work, and our evaluation of that. That's the Senate's job. And when you go through on today's list of those committee appointees that we will be sending back to committee, there are, I don't know how many names, 80 names, 60 names on this list of folks that may or may not be doing as great a job as those folks that you're talking about, Senator Putnam. And we don't have the opportunity to see that. And quite frankly, we will not have the opportunity to see them or evaluate their work or be able to have a check on that. We've seen commissioners that know that they have to have a confirmation hearing work so diligently on both sides of the aisle to make sure that they have the votes to pass and to earn their jobs. These folks will never have to do that and therefore never be accountable. Now we've got fraud that's rampant in the state of Minnesota. What would have happened if they would have had to work with commissioners, with appointees, would have had to make sure that they worked and answered to the people of Minnesota? We may have gotten a different result. I feel that Minnesota is being robbed of that transparency and that ability to have a check and a balance on the appointees that the executive branch is putting into these positions. So, Mr. President, I am just very disappointed that we do not have that opportunity or will not have that opportunity as the Constitution had asked for. So thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate's advice and consent obligation is a constitutional obligation. It's an extremely important function that this body and this body alone plays. We are the people's voice for who is going to run these important executive agencies, and we should not abdicate our responsibility. And I understand currently right before us, it's just these three, but my comments should be on every vote that's going to come after this one, because we have dozens of names on here where the plan by the Democrat majority is to simply send them back to committee into purgatory and do nothing with it. And some of these names have been serving as commissioner for multiple years with no committee hearings on confirmation and no Senate confirmation as a whole. That is our job, Mr. President. Our job is advice and consent to scrutinize the governor's picks to lead these agencies and to either confirm them or to not confirm them. And we're abdicating our role en masse across all administrative agencies here today, on full display for Minnesotans to see. We need to do our job as senators. This is our job. There's fraud all across our state. We need to be scrutinizing these positions. And how do we do that? We do it through our advice and consent powers under the Constitution. We do it by holding committee hearings on these commissioners. Then we bring them to the floor and we vote to either confirm them or not confirm. What we don't do is en masse, dozens of names, bring them up to the floor and send them back to committee for no action. That is a disservice to Minnesotans. That lacks transparency. It lacks accountability. These commissioners should be accountable to this body. And if we were to exercise our authority under the Constitution, they would be more accountable to this body. And they would be more accountable to Minnesotans as a result. This is bad government, what is happening here today with the Democrat majority abdicating its responsibility under our Constitution. People wonder why things have gotten so bad. This is part of the reason right here. We're not doing our job. And even if you think they're doing a great job, bring them up, get the votes, get them confirmed, and do it the right way. Mr. President, we're going to need to change the law on this to get this body to do what it's supposed to do. I've got a bill, Senate File number 4312, that hasn't gotten a hearing or any traction. What that would do is it would force this body to bring these agency commissioners to a vote on confirmation within 30 days after the governor appoints. And if it doesn't get that hearing, then they're automatically not confirmed. And maybe that's what we're going to need to do to whip this body into shape, to do its job, and to hold the executive branch accountable. This is basic checks and balances in our government. This is what the people of Minnesota expect. So I'm going to be voting no on every single one of these commissioners to send it back to committee where nothing is going to be done. And the committee chairs should commit to having hearings, and I know that they just want to ride out the clock. They should have been having hearings a long time ago. So I'm going to be voting no on all of these, and I encourage members to do the same.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, I wonder if the author would yield for a question. Senator Putnam.
Senator Putnam will yield. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Putnam, am I correct? If this motion passes, these would revert back to the Ag Committee and not be in front of the Senate to call up for confirmation, advice, or consent. Is that correct?
Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Westrom. Yes.
Senator Westrom.
And so, Mr. President, Senator Putnam, if you'd yield for another question.
He will yield. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Putnam, some of these we've had for well over a year. Is there a reason we haven't scheduled these in front of the Ag Committee last year or this year to have a hearing and find out more about them, their background, their expertise, and their commitment to serving on these respective positions?
Senator Putnam.
Mr. President, Senator Westrom, thank you for the question. As you know, We've been quite busy with lots of work. But one other thing I think is important about this conversation is understanding that these individuals we're talking about are people that we work with fairly closely, at least in our committee. We work very closely in the Veterans Committee with Commissioner Lindsay. And there are multiple opportunities to appraise the quality of someone's service. There are lots of times where we interact with people in these positions where we can hold them accountable, provide them advice, tell them to do their job better, or to applaud them for doing it great. And I can say that in our work with MDVA, in particular, in the veterans context, in that jurisdiction, we've had a great working relationship with Commissioner Lindsay, and it has not been a sense of urgency for that specific bit of business for our committee to this date.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, thank you, Senator Putnam. I think the bigger point, Senator Putnam, that I raise concern about is the Constitution is the highest law of the land in our state. That directs everything, and that guides everything if there's a question in process or what else can or can't be done. The Constitution is the supreme law of our state. The Constitution and our forefathers felt this was enough of a checks and balance that the advice and consent was written into our Constitution for the purpose of having checks and balances and oversight over the executive branch. As I talk to constituents, I commonly tell them, this is not a power the House of Representatives has. It is sole to the Senate. And it's written explicitly in our Constitution, delegated just to the Senate. 67 of us. And you're right, we work with a lot of these people on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, but not if you're not on the committee. You seldom may see some of these. You don't get the opportunity to dig into their background, their guiding principles, what they've done well, what they've overseen, what they've maybe not done well, because all of that comes up in committee processes or a floor hearing. Unfortunately, it hasn't been a big enough priority to take through committee, and we're going to hear this theme over and over today. The committees under the DFL control have said this isn't important enough. We don't think this part of the Constitution is that valuable, or we'll just pass it off. And that's a way we as Democrats who have, the Democrats, I should say, that have a one vote majority to 33 Republicans. This is a crafty way to ignore the Constitution and cut the minority out from this hearing, advice, and consent, that some would go fast and others should be vigorous debates, because there's a lot of senators that might know pieces of the puzzle that other senators want to know as somebody is being contemplated for an appointment and a confirmation from the governor. He sometimes appoints good people, other times he appoints political hacks that really don't care about fraud or other concerns of citizens. And that's the reason the Senate is this balancing force to have advice and consent. And when someone was blatantly political, blatantly over their head in the job, maybe doesn't know it well enough, maybe cannot work bipartisanly, maybe is an activist and they aren't going to care about the legislature, we can try to vet that out when we have hearings. But now to move it away from the Senate floor is troubling, because we are at the point in the last 4 weeks of the second year of the session, committees by and large haven't had any hearings on these commissioners and appointments, and now this vote would move it further away from the Senate floor to make it even more difficult for the Senate to advise and consent. And so, members, with all the fraud going on in the state of Minnesota, the House is on fire, and we're going to move appointments from the governor further away from the Senate having any oversight per the Constitution. I think it's an easy red vote. Let's keep them here. Let's bring these appointments up and have advice and consent from the Senate as our Constitution has set forth.
Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. Senator Johnson, Senator Kroon, Senator Westrom. First of all, members, I want to tell you how many emails I've got from my district asking me about confirmations. 0. Mr. President, it has been the custom of the Senate to start these discussions in the committee. I will be a yes vote on the motion. Respect the committee process, and we'll do just fine. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members.
Further discussion on the Putnam motion. Senator Putnam renews his motion that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Agriculture, Veterans, Broadband, and Rural Development and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2 reported in the Journal for April 22, 2026 be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn. Secretary will take the roll. Senator Frentz for remote voters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report Senator Carlson votes aye,
Senator Carlson votes aye.
and Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to report Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes aye. Senator Jasinski for remote voters.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes, 33 nay votes, the Putnam motion is adopted. Senator Swadzinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Education Policy and placed on the confirmation calendar under Section Rule 8.2 reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026 be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn. These members are included in your minutes, but the Board of the Perpich Center for the Arts Education, Sally Korish, Pasha Korsravi, Board of Minnesota State Academies, Annette Freihart, Hernan Makata, Sarah Pratt, Jamie Spear, Catherine Wingbird, the Board of School Administrators, Ginger Gustafson, Drew Hildenbrand, Melissa Schaller, Pelsby, Amy Aho, Justin Holscher, Kurt Stumpf, Jennifer Trask, Janie Yang, and the School Trust Lands Director, Aaron Vonde Linde. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion on the motion of Senator Swadzinski. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested and granted. Further discussion. Secretary will take the roll on the Swadzinski motion. Senator Frentz for remote voters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes aye.
And Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes aye. Senator Jasinski for remote voters.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes and 33 nay votes, the Swadzinski motion is adopted. Senator Herr.
Mr. President, I move that the appointment withdrawn from the Committee on Environment, Climate, and Legacy and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal on April 22nd, 2026, and be returned to the committee from which they will withdraw. This is for the Board of Water, Soil, and Resource, Chair Todd Holman, Department of Natural Resource Commissioner Sarah Stroman, Clean Water Council. List of names include John Barton, Steve Bess, Richard Biss, Richard Brainer, Stephen Christensen, Warren Fomo, Brett Guzman, Kelly Grabovat, Holly Hadawit, Anna Knight, Ali Omerson, Peter Schwarzinger, Jessica Wilson, and under Lazar Sam Outdoor Heritage Council, Suzanne Bry, Tom Saxhall, under Minnesota Environment Quality Board, Ed Brenn, Daniel Katzenberger, Nicholas Martin, Angela Smith, and under Minnesota Pollution Control Agency Commissioner Katrina Kessler. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion on the Senator Herr motion. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request roll call.
Roll call requested and granted. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, wondering if the author of the motion would yield.
Senator Herr will yield. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Herr, do you intend to have hearings on these appointed officials in your committee?
Senator Herr.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. Yes, I will.
Senator Westrom.
And Mr. President, Senator Herr, can you give us the body an estimate of time? Will it be before we end session this year? Or when do you estimate having hearings on these?
Senator Herr, do you yield? He yields. Senator Herr.
Senator Westrom, that is to be determined depending on the business on the floor here. Thank you.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. President, if Senator Herr would continue to yield.
Senator Herr will yield. Senator Westrom.
So, Senator Herr, in my first question, you said you do plan to have hearings. Can you give us more insight? Will those hearings be before the end of session or not?
Senator Herr.
Mr. President, the date is to be determined.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. President, Senator Herr, one more question if you would yield.
Senator Herr will yield. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Herr, what's the reason you haven't had a hearing on these appointees in the last year or during this year's session? Some of them are significant appointees, Commissioner of PCA, Commissioner of DNR, Bowser. Those are significant positions that affect a lot of businesses, landowners, and constituents. Why haven't you had a hearing on them so far? And we're now a month away from the second year of the session.
Senator Herr.
Mr. President, Senator Westrom, last biennium we did have hearing on them, and this last year and this year we still determining the time to schedule them. But it all result in trying to get people informed and trying to be us to give them a firm vote before we give hearings for them in a committee.
Senator Westrom.
Well, Mr. President, Senator Herr, I do not like the theme that I am hearing from the Democrats. Just another example of how disregarding they are to the issues in front of us that we hear from constituents. The big issue being the fraud that has faced our state, and the commissioners of our departments are the top management under the governor to control and oversee spending in their departments. And now we are going to take these motions to confirm or advise and consent or not confirm, which is the Senate's opportunity and constitutional obligation, and we are going to move it to the Environment Committee, who hasn't found enough time to have hearings on these for the committee to report back to us. And now we're going to send it back to committee that doesn't have time to do it, and we're going to be derelict in our duties of the Senate. And these appointed members that Senator Herr read off in the motion, some of them oversee some very important issues. Land use, our natural resources, mining interests up on the North Shores and northern Minnesota. These are the exact agencies that stymie some of that growth and development opportunity for our state. And it's not important enough for the Democrats to have a hearing or have a discussion and a hearing on the Senate floor to air out these concerns. And so we're seeing another motion to bury these appointments, ignore the constitutional obligation and right for the Senate to advise and consent in this narrow majority of the Democrats with one more vote. And this is their way to bury these appointments and let them continue to work and frustrate Minnesotans without any scrutiny or review by the Senate. The Democrats continue to be derelict in their duties, continue to ignore the fraud that's going on here in Minnesota, and that's why we Republicans are speaking up every turn we can, because we're one vote short to stop this nonsense by the Democrats and ignoring the public and the constitutional obligation that we should all take more seriously, especially the Democrats that have ignored this now for over a year and a half. And now they're taking away the Senate's opportunity to give more advice and consent to these appointments from the governor, which is our sole duty under the Constitution. Vote no, members.
Further discussion on the motion of Senator Herr. The Secretary will take the roll on the motion. Senator Jasinski for those voting remotely.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes yes.
And Senator Gustafson votes yes.
Senator Gustafson votes yes. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes and 33 nay votes, the Herr motion is adopted. Senator Wiklund.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Health and Human Services and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026, be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn. And this would include the Department of Children, Youth, and Families Commissioner, Department of Health Commissioner, Vinsure Board, and Office of Emergency Medical Services Director.
Discussion on the Wiklund motion. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request a roll call.
Roll call requested and granted. Further discussion on the motion. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, I'm wondering if the author would yield for a question.
Senator Wiklund will yield. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, it sounds like some of the departments you read off are some of the key ones that are facing alleged fraud problems. Is that correct?
Senator Wiklund.
Mr. President, Senator Westrom, I don't know how to particularly answer that question in a blanket way. Is there something specific that you're asking?
Senator Westrom.
Well, Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, I think I was pretty specific. I'll try to get more specific. Is there any fraud concerns in the departments of the appointments that you made a motion to return back to your committee?
To the question, Senator Wiklund.
Mr. President, I think if you look at over the years, there are allegations of fraud that have been investigated in the Department of Children, Youth, and Families because they are responsible for the Child Care Assistance Program. I'm not coming up with other specific allegations of fraud that have been come up through these other entities, but I do know that the Department of Children, Youth, and Families is aggressively acting on allegations of fraud, and they are investigating allegations that come forward in a very diligent way.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, you continue to yield.
She will continue. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, I think you also said the Department of Human Services. Has there been no fraud concerns in that agency, Senator Wiklund?
Senator Wiklund.
Mr. President, Senator, I did not say the name Department of Human Services.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Wiklund. So, Senator Wiklund, one more question, if she'd continue to yield.
She will. Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, what is the reason you are moving these appointments back to your committee? Have you had hearings on these already? And what's the reason you're moving them off the floor further away from appointment, advice, and consent?
Senator Wiklund.
Mr. President, Senator, we are moving them back to committee because that is where the discussion should be had before moving them to the floor. We did have a hearing on the Department of Health Commissioner, and I am not aware of why that did not get taken up on the floor after we had the hearing. And so it's not that we haven't had hearings in my committee, but we wish to move these back to committee so they could be evaluated there.
Senator Westrom.
Thank you, Senator Wiklund. You prompted one more question, if you would continue to yield.
She will. Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, I think it was my mistake. Department of Health you mentioned. Have we had any fraud concerns in that department brought up to us? And you mentioned you did have a hearing. Did any of that get discussed in the hearing?
Senator Wiklund.
Mr. President, Senator, we had a hearing on the Commissioner of Health nomination, and I do not recall any discussion at that time about fraud, and the committee voted to move her recommendation forward. So I don't have a recollection of fraud being brought up in that committee. And that was, yeah, good.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, I have one more question now, if you'd yield.
She will. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, Senator Wiklund, why are we trying to return this back to your committee if you've already had a hearing? We aren't sure why it hasn't come up on the Senate floor for advice and consent. Why are we sending it back to your committee and averting the Senate from being able to have a hearing to advise, consent, approve, or disapprove?
Senator Wiklund.
Mr. President, Senator, it's because of our Senate rule, and I believe it's Senate Rule 8.2, they can only remain on the confirmation calendar for a certain amount of time, and then they need to be referred back to the committee from which they were withdrawn. So it needs to be referred back.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. President, members, I rise again to suggest vote no on this motion. Take the job of the Senate and the Constitution much more serious. And you've just heard from the author of the motion. We aren't sure why we haven't brought it up. We should bring it up urgently, all of these appointments, and be responsible for the job the voters sent us here to do, the opportunity, the obligation that our forefathers were smart enough to put in the Constitution to have checks and balances, and the Democrats just continued to ignore this, acting as if they don't have time and it's not a big enough concern. Folks, the House is on fire with fraud in this state. These appointments are an important part of management in the executive branch, and it's the one few times that we have some crossover oversight with what the governor elects to hire for his management. And we should take this more seriously. The Republicans are trying over and over, and the Democrats continue to bring motions to bury these appointments so they don't have to have any scrutiny. Vote no.
Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the commissioners that we're voting on right now to pass through without having a hearing or consenting and advising is Commissioner Tiki Brown from the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. That oversees the child care payments that made Minnesota famous earlier this year, or late last year, actually. When Nick Shirley came to Minnesota, he went to the Quality Leering Center and exposed to the world that there are millions and millions of dollars going out to programs and to facilities that have no children attending. We're making payments from this state to empty buildings so that a few fraudsters can make a killing off of the government dole. This commissioner should have been a top priority. This individual oversaw one of the greatest fumbling of financial dollars in the history of America. This story became so wide that Minnesota is now infamous, not just for a governor that made a fool of himself, but for an entire government that made a fool of itself. And for some reason, the Democrats in this chamber look the other way and do not ask questions. They're not interested. They don't want to know how Tiki Brown failed. They don't want to know how the other commissioners failed to properly address this issue, to oversee the money that we trust them to oversee. I'm confident that Tiki Brown will not get a confirmation hearing before the next legislature comes in if we vote yes on this motion. And I don't want to impugn anybody's motives, so I won't, but I ask Minnesotans to impugn motives today. I ask you to look at this and realize that half of this body, the Democrats, have no interest in bringing this forward to have a discussion about it, and you can impugn your own motives at home and come to your own conclusions. I would hope to see red votes on this so that we can actually do our job here in this body. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion of Senator Wiklund. Secretary will take the roll. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to report that Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
And Senator Gustafson votes aye.
Senator Gustafson votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes and 33 nay votes, the motion of Senator Wiklund is adopted. Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Higher Education and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026, be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn. And this is for the Board of Trustees of the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, as well as the Minnesota Higher Education Facilities Authority.
Discussion on the motion of Senator Fateh. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a roll call.
Roll call requested. Roll call granted. Further discussion. The Secretary will take the roll. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
And Senator Gustafson votes aye.
Senator Gustafson votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes and 32 nay votes, the Fateh motion is adopted. Senator Bolden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Housing and Homelessness Prevention and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22, 2026, be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn. This is the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, Eric Cooperstein, John DeKramer, Stephanie Klinsing, and Terry Tao. And Mr. President, I would request a roll call.
Discussion on the motion of Senator Bolden. Senator Jasinski. Oh, a roll call requested and granted.
Thank you.
Secretary will take the roll. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
And Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howell votes no.
Senator Howell votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Nelson votes no.
Senator Nelson votes no. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 35 aye votes and 32 nay votes, the Bolden motion is adopted. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Senator Champion, I move the appointment withdrawn from the Committee on Jobs and Economic Development be placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026, be returned to the committee from which it was withdrawn. This is for the Destination Medical Center Corporation, Pam Wheelock.
Senator Jasinski.
And I ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested and granted. Further discussion on the motion. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as a member of the Jobs Committee, I oppose the motion. We've had plenty of time to hold hearings. We had a number of hearings that were canceled that could have been used for confirmation, and were not. There's no reason that these appointments should be referred back to committee, and I request a no vote.
Further discussion on the motion of Senator Murphy. The Secretary will take the roll. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howell votes no.
Senator Howell votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Nelson votes no.
Senator Nelson votes no. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
And Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes yes. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes and 33 nay votes, the Murphy motion is adopted. Senator Latz.
Mr. President, I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22, 2026, be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn. These are three positions on the Board on Judicial Standards, Commissioner of the Department of Corrections, and the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. And I ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested and granted. Further discussion on the motion. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Latz yield for a question?
Senator Latz will yield. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Latz, is it your intention to have committee hearings on these appointment considerations?
Senator Latz.
Mr. President, Senator Limmer, I would like to, but as Senator Limmer knows, the Judiciary Committee has been extraordinarily busy this year. In fact, we are having another post-deadline hearing on Friday to accommodate all of the needs for our committee time. I have in front of me a list of the 300 bills that we've been referred to in the last 2 years, referred to our committee that we've had hearings on. So it's kind of a squeeze to find the time to have these hearings. I would like to be able to do that. We'll have to see if we can within the time that we have available in session.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, as we all know, we've had quite a few months while these commissioners have been in place temporarily without confirmation. I'm curious that we now all of a sudden have enough business to keep us busy on policy development, but we've had many, many months to consider these confirmations or the consideration of confirmations for quite a few months. I suppose we'll have to have the discussion here and now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to this motion to re-refer these commissioners back to committee where they will not get a hearing. I rise to point out one in particular that's on here, and that's Commissioner Paul Schnell for the Department of Corrections. I think in this particular case, it is very important that the Senate exercise its advice and consent powers under the Minnesota Constitution on this particular commissioner. This commissioner has served in this role for about 8 years without Senate confirmation, but more immediate to that, and very recently, the Minnesota Sheriff's Association submitted a vote of no confidence regarding Commissioner Schnell. And the Department of Corrections oversees inspections of our county jails, and our sheriffs overwhelmingly have serious concerns with Commissioner Schnell that we should be having a hearing on, and this body should be taken seriously in exercising our oversight over the Department of Corrections. The sheriffs, in a press release, have said that the Department of Corrections interpretations and rules on the inspection process have become burdensome and disconnected from operational realities for safe and effective jail management. It's pretty serious. They continue, they say, the Department of Corrections' arbitrary and capricious decisions are consistently creating hardships for those community members who are incarcerated, the legal community, law enforcement, and especially the sheriff's offices who must anticipate with erratic action the Department of Corrections will take against their county. They say that the arbitrary decisions have cost local taxpayers millions of dollars, as local governments must keep rapidly adapting to the department's unrealistic and subjective demands. Millions of dollars that it's cost our counties. Could be part of the reason why property taxes are going up. And they say there's been a lack of follow-through, empty promises, and misinformation from the Department of Corrections and this commissioner. Now, those are serious allegations, not just from random people on the street, but from our sheriffs of our 87 counties. If this vote of no confidence by the sheriffs doesn't trigger us here in the Senate to exercise our advice and consent responsibilities under the Constitution, I'm not sure what will. So on this particular motion, we should vote no, and we should demand accountability within our Department of Corrections. Thank you.
Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will echo the concerns brought forward by Senator Kroon. The Minnesota Sheriff's Association didn't just say everything he said, they said more. They said that the DOC and Commissioner Schnell's actions were coercive, arbitrary, capricious, and he took a dictatorial approach to his position. A dictatorial approach. At one public forum, or multiple, it was stated that DOC has the authority to take whatever action it wants to. Again, a dictatorial approach. And of course, the sheriffs ended by saying that they call upon Commissioner Schnell to resign from his office or upon his, and I'll insert this, assumptive refusal to do so, they call for his removal of office from the governor. Well, it's not just the governor that can not consent to his position. He has not been approved by this body. In my own county, we have suffered under the dictatorial approach of Commissioner Schnell. The way he manages the jails, or, as I quote, takes whatever action he chooses to against our jails, hurts our county. The Community Corrections Act, when Wright County tried to move to it last year, he chose to abuse law to, as a commissioner in my county would put it, to hold the county hostage, to extort, as it was put, money from our county, because he fails to manage his own department financially correctly. How many times has he come before this body asking for more money? It's constant. This is not a commissioner like any other. And Senator Latz, I'm surprised that this wasn't more important to you this year, after we had an inmate from the Shakopee Women's Prison come before our committee and speak to the Eighth Amendment violations that she experienced under cruel and unusual punishment when a predatory male or multiple were allowed to come into the Shakopee Women's Prison to prey upon the women there under the guise that they were mentally ill and transgender. Those women live in abject fear. We heard the stories. They were terrified for their safety. But again, that is not a priority of this body today. Not because the Republicans here don't want it to be. We all recognize, we hear the Sheriff's Association from the 87 counties. We hear the concerns. We listen to and have real serious compassion for the women who are suffering under those Eighth Amendment violations, under the cruel and unusual punishment of Commissioner Schnell. We hear them and want to solve this problem. We want to take steps to find the answers. But the Democrats in this body refuse to do their job. They refuse to allow us to do ours. You're going to see 34 votes on that roll call in a moment. And I ask you again to impugn your own motives, to consider for a minute why nobody cares, why the members of the Democrat Senate refuse to act. I would hope that you choose to deny this motion. I would hope that you choose to vote red, but your choice will be judged. Thank you.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too am rising in opposition to this motion. This one particular commissioner with the Department of Corrections is probably the most egregious one that we have on this whole list, as the Democrats are seeking to ignore responsibility and accountability and shuttle all of these back to committee where they will be forgotten about and left untouched for the remainder of this term. There have been real and ongoing concerns with counties in my own district about impending decisions that the DOC could be making at any time that would directly impact county jails and the ability for some of my county sheriffs to keep their communities safe are in effect. I have one sheriff in particular who's talked to me about particular issues and concerns for multiple years, long before we had this letter come out in December of the entire Sheriff's Association submitting a vote of no confidence. Something that I bet that even the most senior members of this body have never seen in their tenure here in the legislature. This is so rare and unprecedented, and yet this agency has been so mismanaged that it came to this drastic choice by the majority of our nonpartisan elected sheriffs in the state of Minnesota. I have one particular county sheriff that is concerned about a particular decision that he's worried could come out at any moment directly targeting him and his county. And a move like this today means that this commissioner and this agency will be able to do whatever decision they want unchecked for the remainder of the term, that there will be no accountability for a member like myself to come and raise issues and urge this body to hold a commissioner accountable for an egregious action done in my own county. This is going to take that away, stuff it back in committee, have it be forgotten about for the rest of this session, and then be unavailable to be touched for the remainder of this term. And so I urge the members of this body, we had unprecedented actions here by our 87 sheriffs that recognize this is a problem that cannot continue to go on. And we need at least one more member from the majority Democrats to be willing to agree to say enough is enough. To be willing to join me and my county in having a lever of accountability to keep this agency at check, rather than making a decision targeted in my district that would endanger the public safety of my sheriff's ability to keep our community safe. I urge this body to reject this motion. The Senate needs to do its advice and consent role on this issue alone because of the unprecedented response and nature we have had towards the Department of Corrections. I urge a no vote on this motion.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand also in concern over the confirmation of Commissioner Snell. Faribault has the largest prison in the state, and I've been around that facility, both between the mayor and the Senate positions that I've held for 12 years now, 14 years. And I've heard many, many concerns over the years, and especially since Commissioner Snell has been there since 2019. From guards all over the place. They see me at the grocery store, or the post office, or wherever they see me, their concerns of what's happening at the prison. Commissioner Snell eliminated the canine program in the Faribault Correctional Facility. Members, that is what keeps our correctional officers safe. Imagine a large disturbance or a fight in the yard, putting our correctional officers at risk. Bringing a canine dog in eliminates that concern. The prisoners stop. It's a huge tool that they have to use to keep them and the prisoners safe. Commissioner Snell eliminated that program. Also, I've talked to the sheriffs, who's been a part of this letter, and voted no confidence in Commissioner Snell. They have concerns as well, obviously. It's costing our states millions and millions and millions of dollars in upgrades for our jail facilities. I don't know how many local sales tax, bonding projects of money being spent because of the issues that we're seeing, the Department of Corrections and Commissioner Snell. So I urge you to vote no.
Further discussion on the motion of Senator Latz. Senator Latz.
Mr. President and members, some of us here have a long enough institutional memory to understand where the lengthy delays and arbitrary exercise of this advice and consent began, at least in my memory, when the GOP had the majority. They rejected the appointment of Ellen Anderson as a commissioner, not because she was not qualified or there were any ethical questions or anything like that, but because the GOP majority disagreed with the policies that she was going to be implementing. In other words, they denied, I think it was then Governor Dayton, the right to appoint the commissioner to implement the policies that he'd been elected to implement. I also recall that the GOP majority rejected the appointment of Steve Kelly as Commissioner of Commerce. Steve was my predecessor in this Senate seat, a person of impeccable integrity, ethics, and qualifications for that particular position. And again, it was not based on any lack of qualifications. It was a disagreement with Senator Kelly on policy that led to that failure to confirm. As I would say, arbitrary and capricious exercise of the advice and consent role of the Senate, exercised by the GOP majority in this body. And then I also know in the last time that the GOP had the majority in this body that they refused to hear and consider the confirmation of a whole range of commissioners. Again, not because of any concerns about qualifications or ethics or anything like that, but rather because the GOP majority knew that as long as they held on to those confirmations, or they thought they would have leverage to hold in check the policies implemented by those commissioners on behalf of the governor who had appointed them. It was the GOP majority that failed to exercise their constitutional obligations to bring forth those appointments expeditiously within 3 or 6 months of the appointments. And now, when they don't like what's going on, when they don't have the majority, all of a sudden, this constitutional requirement has such sanctity and importance that we're hearing the high road all over this floor repeatedly, over and over again. We're being deprived of our right. The Democratic majority is not complying with this constitutional obligation, conveniently forgetting that the GOP exercised that failure to comply with exactly that constitutional requirement that they are now exalting above all others. And I'm not even going to go down the road of how many other constitutional provisions have been run roughshod around this state in the last couple of years, especially in the last 6 months, while the GOP has remained absolutely silent when those constitutional provisions have been violated. So I'm sorry if I don't give a whole lot of credence now to what I'm hearing from the GOP minority today about these constitutional concerns. I encourage a green vote on this.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I think this might be a time to tone down the rhetoric. You know, in recent events regarding Commissioner Schnell, we only need to go back to the last legislative session where he came to a conference committee urging the legislature to close Stillwater Prison. He could have brought it in during the legislative session. We could have had public hearings. We could have had the people of Stillwater come in, give their references and recommendations. Kind of highly unusual that such an issue of such importance came in the middle of a conference committee. Usually we have more policy discussion than bringing something that was not included in either House or Senate bill and consider something of so much importance. Commissioner Schnell was leading that effort. And you know, it was a great concern to the corrections staff at the Stillwater Prison. They didn't know much about it either. So, rush judgment without public scrutiny is something that we should always be cautious of, and it should give us a signal that we need to slow down. Well, the movement has already begun to close Stillwater. They've moved inmates, many of them reducing the population of Stillwater down and spreading it out to other institutions. Many of them, now these are violent offenders, have been moved to lesser category of prisons, namely Rush City. Rush City is where double bunking occurs. Moving violent offenders into more of a modest status of inmates is something that I would not consider to be prudent. Since then, there's been a steady and alarming rise in violent offenders.
Mr. President,
for what purpose do you rise?
Point of order.
State
We
your
are
point of order.
discussing the motion to move these confirmations back to committee, and it seems to me that Senator Limmer is violating Rule 36.2. He is not talking to the question. He is involving personalities. Please remind him that that it's just not proper. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, advice. Point of order is well taken. Senator Limmer to the motion on the table.
Thank you, Mr. President. In discussing this issue, we were talking about the qualifications of Commissioner Schnell. Deflecting a discussion on ancient history of whether there's partisan confirmations or not really does not have a lot of bearing in this discussion. The Department of Corrections and the commissioner that's involved handles management, budget, oftentimes repair, and the hiring of staff. The information that came from the Sheriff's Association from 5 months ago characterize a completely different expectation of what we would want from a commissioner of corrections. Because of these issues, I would recommend our body to vote no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Limmer. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to prevent the motion of sending the confirmations to committee. It is very relevant that we take up these confirmations now on this floor. When in particular, the Judiciary Committee commissioners, Commissioner Schnell is among that group, has been in office serving far too long without the advice and consent of the Senate. As I was listening to the remarks of Senator Latz, bemoaning that Republicans would oppose the policies of some commissioners, and therefore it's not justified to withhold advice and consent. Well, that's the exact purpose. Look at the Constitution, Mr. President, Senator Latz. I read it. It says, with the advice and consent. That includes policies. The legislative branch exists as a check over the executive branch. And if the legislative branch does not like the advertised policies of a commissioner, it is well within our constitutional responsibility to deny that commissioner. It's not just, as was suggested, for ethics or qualifications. Policies are 100% in order. And what has the policy been with the Democrats in majority of this Senate? It's to deny the constitutional responsibility of confirmation hearings. And by extension, it is to deny Minnesotans the accountability for the failed government. It is to deny Minnesotans the ability to live in a Minnesota that they can have confidence that their government is working within the purview of the Constitution. Democrats have used their majority to abuse the power by withholding the confirmation hearings. And with the motion before us, it's to send it to committee after being in the majority for 3.5 years, to send these nominations to committee where they will die, never having the advice and consent of the Senate and having served in that role for 4 years. That's an abomination. We need to stand for the Constitution. That's what Republicans are doing. Please support the Republican position, standing for the Constitution and preventing these nominations from going to committee to die at the hands of the Democrats.
Further discussion on the motion of Senator Latz. The Secretary will take the roll on the Latz motion. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes aye.
And Senator Kunish votes yes.
Senator Kunish votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Mr. President.
Senator Jasinski.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes and 33 nay votes, the Latz motion is adopted. Senator Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move that the appointments be withdrawn from the Committee on State and Local Government and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026, be returned to the committee from which they were withdrawn in relation to the Board of Arts, Department of Admin, Gambling Control Board, Minnesota Racing Commission, and the Minnesota State Lottery.
Discussion on the Zhang motion. Senator Jasinski.
Mr. President, request roll call.
Roll call requested and granted. Further discussion. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, members, I am opposed to the process, not just this particular confirmation series of confirmations. But it's shocking and disappointing that at the time when we need the most advice, the most accountability with all of our commissioners, these commissioners are appointed by the governor, and it's our job as the Senate to provide that oversight and that accountability. And it appears today that the commissioners that are being addressed today are simply, it looks like it's just avoiding having them need to be reappointed again. That's what it looks like, because they have not been confirmed yet, and yet they've been on the calendar for so long. And of course the question is, why haven't there been confirmation hearings? Why have the people of Minnesota not been able to ask questions of these commissioners? Why have we not had that oversight? And so, Mr. Chair, I just want to be on record, or Mr. President, I have and I will continue to oppose every one of these motions today that is basically removing accountability from the role of providing advice and from the Senate, which is so definitely needed. So I just want to make sure this is not a personal thing about the commissioners. It is the process. I'm objecting to the process. We're skirting accountability at the time we need it most.
Further discussion on the Zhang motion. The Secretary will take the roll. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Kunish votes yes.
Senator Kunish votes yes.
Senator Westland votes yes.
Senator Westland votes yes.
That's it for the moment, Mr. President.
President.
Senator Jasinski.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report that Senator Pappas votes yes.
Senator Pappas votes aye. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 aye votes and 33 nay votes, the Zhang motion is adopted. Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Taxes and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026, be returned to the Tax Committee from which they were withdrawn. I request a roll call, and I'd like to speak to the motion.
Roll call is granted. Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I would like all of those, and I'll just name some of them: Senators Pratt, Limmer, Holstrom, Lucero, Johnson, Kroon, to attend the Tax Committee hearing next Tuesday at 8:30 a.m., where the two judges to the tax court have been invited to appear for their confirmation hearing. I expect all of you to vote green. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion on the motion, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Rest, I accept your invitation, provided that Senator Marty gives me a hall pass from Finance.
Further discussion on the motion, Senator Senator Rest, any final thoughts? No. The Secretary will take the roll on the rest of motion.
Hypocrites.
Senator Frentz for remote voters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Pappas votes yes.
Senator Pappas votes yes.
Senator Kunish votes yes.
Senator Kunish votes yes.
Senator Westland votes yes.
Senator Westland votes yes.
And Senator Hochschild votes yes.
Senator Hochschild votes yes. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Howell votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 55 aye votes and 12 nay votes, the rest motion is adopted. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Transportation and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for April 22nd, 2026, be returned to the Transportation Committee from which they were withdrawn. Mr. President, members, these are those appointments pertaining to the Met Council, the seats being held by those council members. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in opposition. Senator Dibble, we've had a lot of discussions over this session as part of the Met Council. Remember, members, the Met Council spends millions, if not millions, billions of taxpayer money without being elected. We've had discussion about that. Senator Dibble and I have had the same concerns. They spend a lot of money. They're not elected, so Senator Dibble's had some concerns over the makeup of that body. He's worked on that. We've also had a lot of concerns about overruns on the Met Council. The Southwest Light Rail was originally projected at $1.25 billion as a project, is now looking at $2.9 billion. That's $1.6 billion over budget. So, Senator Dibble, is there a reason why we haven't had the confirmation in the Transportation Committee to discuss the confirmation of these 14 members?
Senator Dibble will yield. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Jasinski, for your comments. I think we actually agree more than we disagree. We might disagree about the prudency of bringing these individuals forward for hearing and confirmation in the committee. But I actually had made an affirmative decision not to bring these members forward at this time because it does reflect my ongoing concern about the structure of the council, which, as you well expressed, vests significant authority over matters of law, matters of taxation, and public spending in an unelected body. So I feel, members, Mr. President, to be just very honest and very transparent that moving forward with confirmation under those circumstances would be interpreted as endorsing and legitimizing that structure. And I believe it's more important for the legislature to more fully examine these governance questions before proceeding.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request a roll call.
Roll call is granted. Further discussion on the Dibble motion. Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, if Senator, oh, there it goes. If Senator Dibble would yield for a question.
He will yield. Senator Gruenhagen.
Yeah, Senator Dibble, I know you have many concerns about the Met Council, so do I, for a long, long time. And the problem is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, their original charter said that they were supposed to be concerned about sewer lines only. How did they get into all these other areas that you articulated? Do they just add them by themselves? Are they approved somewhere in state government? Does the feds expand their authority? And again, they're just appointed individuals, yet they wield the power of almost a small elected body. So how did they get to expand into all these other areas that you listed out? If Senator Dibble would respond.
Senator Dibble will answer. Members, we are on the question of referring the commissioner's confirmation back to committee. Senator Dibble.
Thank you for that reminder. I will respond, but briefly. Great question. I appreciate the question. Mr. President, in responding to Senator Gruenhagen, I'll say that the Met Council is similarly in its legal construction to a local unit of government. It's a subdivision of the state of Minnesota, and so it's created in the laws of our state, and its powers are conferred by the laws of our state. So obviously, that was a decision of past legislatures and the past governors. I believe, however, a constitutional analysis of the powers conferred to the Metropolitan Council, given that they are not elected, the size and scope and sweep of the powers, as well as their direct powers of taxation and their superior powers over the laws that are passed by local units of government, their ability to appropriate millions and billions of dollars, is an unconstitutional delegation of power. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gruenhagen, to the motion before the body.
Yeah, that's all the more reason we should bring them forward for consent and advisement of the Senate. I mean, these people are they're unelected, they're acting like they're elected, they're, as according to Senator Dibble, their taxation, they're spending millions of dollars, huge cost overruns. In my opinion, there's a lot of corruption in the Met Council, and they are more political than they are in terms of doing what's best for the people of Minnesota. So please vote red on this. Let's bring them forward and have a vetting process on the Met Council and make sure that the citizens of the state of Minnesota understand the abuses that these people are implementing in the state. Please vote red. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary will take the roll. Senator Frantz?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to report that Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Hochschild votes aye.
Senator Hauschild votes, has already
And Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howell votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
And thank you, Madam President. Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no. All members having voted who desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 ayes and 31 nays, the motion of Senator Dibble prevails. Remaining on motions and resolutions, Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. Pursuant to Rule 26, I designate the following bills be made special orders for immediate consideration.
Members, the list is on your desks. Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Madam President and members. I rise to present the Omnibus Bill for the Subcommittee on Veterans and Military Affairs. Madam President, this is a short and simple bill, but it is profound and deeply, deeply meaningful. Today, when we pass this bill, members, we will be keeping a promise that has been long, too long, deferred. So many have chosen to put their lives in danger and keep us safe. It is well past time for us to choose to honor their decision and the service that has changed their lives. This bill has two major provisions that deal with this fundamental concern: respect for those who have served us. The first deals with those brave individuals who chose to fight for America in the secret war in Laos. Members, you may remember that last year we unanimously voted to acknowledge the service of these heroes, and we created a task force to shape and consider how that honor would manifest. Before you, we have the results of that task force. And after today, the Minnesota Senate finally will have completed the job to respect the service of these brave individuals. The second provision in this bill, members and Madam President, enables soldiers who have served honorably in the Minnesota National Guard to be interred in state veterans cemeteries. This is the culmination of Senator Howe's long commitment to those with whom he has served. And I am proud today that we have the opportunity to join him in that commitment to those who have served and given so much for us, and recognizing our neighbors in the National Guard by giving them the ability to be buried in Minnesota State veterans cemeteries. Mr. President, Madam President, excuse me, and members, these folks chose to serve us, and now it's our chance to choose to respect them. That is the bill, Madam President and members.
Further discussion? Senator Herr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support this bill, and I just want to make comment a little bit too on the history and the background of it. And I'm going to make just a brief remark. But I recall last year when Senator Putnam brought up this bill, and one of his statements was that Minnesota's story cannot be without the Hmong people. And vice versa, the Hmong people story cannot be without Minnesota. And we are people with no homeland. We're a nameless country. There's no Hmong land out there. But wherever we are, we contribute to that society. And 80 years ago, we're Highlander of Laos. And global conflict between Soviet Union, partner with China, and America was clashing, and they chose the battleground to be North and South Vietnam. And due to the fear of the domino theory, and Laos was a neutral zone at that time, so the CIA sought out my people, the Hmong people, Highlander of Laos, who were not up to date with civilization yet, but were recruited as proxy soldiers by the CIA. And more than 35 lives were lost in replace of American lives. And our payroll, although it was very, very minimal, I saw a record that is $1.72 for a month of pay. And the commanding code or the mission that was told to the Hmong men and women at that time was that 100 lives go save one American. And depend on how you look at it, but from my angle, it's a noble cause. It's a heroic cause. It's a saving life story. And today, I'm proud that we are here to pass a bill and ask all of you to support. This is not a Democrat bill or Republican bill. Same like when my elders fought for during the Secret War. We didn't fight for Republican or we didn't fight for Democrat. It's through the administration of John F. Kennedy to President Nixon. So I thank the leadership. Also, this is a bill to give us honor and recognize, but the elder, as the elder will want, but we know that monetary is not the matter, but the recognition of honor is what really matters, and this bill say all that. And not just the recognition, but the legacy of my people. No country named after them. My people will be here, will be the fabric of multicultural, the mosaic culture of our society. The diversity of their facial will change. And 100 years from now, or 200 years from now, children in Minnesota will look back and know how they made it, their ancestors made it to this country. If we were put in a line of immigration, Hmong being the highland of Laos in the 60s, you will have the elitists make their way through immigration line to come to this country for different opportunity, but Hmong will be the farthest end of the line. But because we were recruited in the war, not our chosen war, but war to defend American democracy, and that was our access to the United States. 95% of the Hmong in Minnesota, or Hmong American Minnesota, are descendants of the SGU recruit. And so that's our legacy. That's why it matters for Minnesota. The recognition is important, but the history to carry on for future is even more important. And I wish that we had passed this bill 2 decades ago, and I wish that the federal had taken action, but we'll leave that for a different day. I'm just thank you for the leadership of Senator Putnam, Senator Pa, and also Senator Howe for carrying the task force. and also open up to be more inclusive to include other ethnic minority or the Lao majority who had contributed to the Civil War in Laos. Young men and women of geographic, and I'm sure only folks of Hmong heritage and Lao heritage know, young men and women from the Baksay region of Laos who come and help the Hmong rescue American pilot. So as the Thai and other ethnic minority that come to aid us. And the inclusion also include our very own, like Air America, for example, the bill, this language will include them as well. Those were American men and women under cooperation flying Air America, and they couldn't tell their family that where are they stationed. And this legislation will include them as well if they see fit, or the Raven, another group. But they have their own pathway. But should they choose this pathway, it's also include them. And so I thank Senator Pa again, and Senator Putnam, and Senator Howe for expanding to include the National Guard that's been waiting for a long time for this recognition as well. So I know that if we had passed this legislation 20 years ago, or if responsibility had been put on a national level, we will have more men and women of Hmong descent and Lao descent up there in the gallery. But today, this may be all we have. And to them, this matters much. They're here to represent the brother and sister in arms of the past. But at the same time, they're here for the future legacy, for their children to know. And from this day forward, the grave marker at Roselawn, Oaklawn, on Jackson Avenue, if you go there, if you see the Hmong grave marker or stone, they either have someone picture a Hmong person, Hmong man, woman fishing, or, with them dressed in military uniform, a picture that they had in Laos. Those are two major things if you look at the Hmong grave marker. But today, as we move forward, it will be official. It will be official, and the grave marker will be a dedication from our state. And I'm glad that grave marker is one, driver license is another, the honor guard service at the funeral is another, and that meant a lot to them. I know they are in tears. I am in tears as well of the progress that brought us here today. And I hope the House will concur with us in supporting our language. And before I close, I also want to say that many people that has gone, who served but had gone, really want this day to happen. People like Brigadier General Harry Idaho, Colonel Belair, CIA operative leader Jerry Daniels, and our most revered General Powell, and all his commanding officer. Thank you very much. Vote green.
Senator Pop.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, I ask you to vote yes in support of this bill for our National Guards and for our SGU veterans. I want to thank Senator Howell for leading on the National Guards bill, and for Chair Putnam for being such an advocate for our veterans. The SGU veterans fought alongside our American soldiers. They bled alongside them. When American pilots were shot down from the sky, it was these men who ran towards danger, who risked their lives, and many of them lost their lives, to bring our American soldiers home. I have sat at many of our SGU funerals, stood at grave sites, and made a promise that our veterans would not be forgotten, that their bravery and sacrifice would be remembered. I am grateful to the over 50 SGU veterans who came out to every single one of our Senate committee hearings. I'm grateful to the partners who worked with me and helped me organize our veterans and our community behind this bill. Mr. John Yang and the Minnesota AAPI Veterans Association, Mr. Lee Pao Hyung and HC 100, all of our veterans organizations, President Tong Vang, Major Getu Lee, Colonel Tu Yang, and all of the SGU Veterans Task Force members, including Senator Howell, who worked so hard over the interim to make the recommendations that are in this bill. I want to thank the MDVA Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner and all of the staff who worked alongside us throughout this entire process. I'm grateful to Senator Herr for championing this bill last year, and grateful to Senator Hyung, Senator Abler, and especially to Chair Putnam for standing strong with our SGU veterans and all veterans. Today we have a full house of our brave heroes that fill both sides of the gallery. They are here, and they are here to represent the hundreds of other veterans who could not be here with us but are watching from home. I stand here together with all of you, and I hope that you will support this bill. I stand as a proud Hmong daughter of an SGU veteran and of all of our SGU veterans. Today we have an opportunity to ensure that every single one of our SGU veterans, living and past, receive the full recognition, the full dignity, and the full honor they bravely earned. Please stand with me and please vote yes.
Senator Zhang.
Thank you, Madam President. It was last time we had this on the bill. It's been quite a while. We've been working on this effort. Virgil in the Aeneid, he wrote of burial rites. Give them their due and let them rest beneath the earth. It has been 50 years since the Vietnam War and the secret war in Laos had ended. It's been 30 years since the first efforts to recognize Hmong Lao SGU veterans when it first began, and almost 20 years since we first elected our Hmong American legislator here in this body. Unfortunately, I've have to begin my speech with the importance of burial rites, because I still remember 25 years ago on the front lawn of this Minnesota Capitol, where veterans, along with men like my grandfather, who were SGU veteran, who are no longer with us, when they were all here by the thousands from all over the country, gathered here to rally and demonstrate their patriotism and love for this country. And for just the chance, just a small chance to tell their story. Their battle alongside the Americans against tyranny and oppression in this country. A story that so few knew about, but they didn't get one single hearing 25 years ago. And so, it was a hurdle at that time for our Hmong community, but we didn't give up. Fortunately, the Hmong American community has not been idle in those past 25 years. They've made the most of the small slice of the American dream that was afforded to them. Because I tell you, in our Hmong Minnesota story, one that would give anyone interested in the hope and promise of this country a slight insight to the American dream. This community worked hard to earn their opportunity to tell their story 25 years later. 25 years ago, our veterans were outside trying to tell their story. Today, 25 years later, instead of waiting outside anymore, they elected 10 of their sons and daughters into this legislature to tell their story today. And so even though men like my grandfather and other Hmong veterans are no longer with us, they are here with us in spirit, smiling in this room. I know that if they were all still here, we wouldn't be able to fill this gallery. But with the members that are still here, the men and women, they carry with them the spirit of those men that stood in this front lawn, bringing their story and realizing their hope and dream for all of us when they made their journey here to America. And today, as the grandson of a secret war veteran, I proudly vote green for this bill. To all those men and women who lost their lives trying to keep our people free, to those who were unfortunate to make it across the Mekong, to those who died on the battlefield, in the jungles, on the trail to seek the chance to come to the land of the free. To all those spirits waiting for their moment to be recognized, we vote here today to honor you. Today is your time. Today, the highest lords of the land here recognize you. And I proudly vote green, and I urge everyone here to also vote green. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion? The Secretary will give Senate File 4807 its third reading.
Senate File Number 4807, a bill for an act relating to state government modifying benefits available to veterans of the Secret War in Laos.
Third reading. Further discussion? Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, members. I also want to thank Mr. Lewis Hunter, and Mr. Andrew Erickson, Ms. Keely Spence, Matt Kelleher, and Nick Roth for all their work on the committee this year and in the years past. Members, as you can tell from some of the stories that we've heard today, this bill is not just policy, it is meaningful. It is profound. It is also overdue. Members, as you think about this bill, think about Senator Lang, Senator Howe, and maybe, yes, even Senator Duckworth. And all of the people who are in this room who have served in the military for the sake of our safety and our freedom. Members, as Senator Zhang was just mentioning, this moment is both the result of and the culmination of American democracy, the culmination of patriotism. And members, think of those three senators, think of everyone who is sitting upstairs in the gallery right now, and realize that they are watching the democracy for which they fought. They fought. All you have to do is press a green button. Do the right thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Putnam. After we take the final vote on this measure, there's going to be a request for a recess in order to honor more informally the veterans who are being honored here. I would like to request that each of you remain at your desk and not leave the chamber during the recess, so that these folks that are sitting in the gallery may feel honored by you. And if members are coming in from outside of the chamber, would you please ask them to do the same? The Secretary will take the roll on final passage of Senate File 4807. Senator Frantz.
Thank you, Madam President. I report Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
And thank you, Madam President.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Madam President, still waiting on one. Madam President.
Senator Jasinski.
Senator Liskey votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes aye. Senator Jasinski. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam President. I apologize. Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye. All members having voted who desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 58 ayes and 8 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Senator Paugh.
Madam President, I move for a brief recess of the Senate to recognize some special guests we have in the gallery.
On the motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is in recess.
Madam President, we have with us in the gallery our SGU veterans and families. I ask that my fellow senators stand with me and thank them for their service. Thank you. You are seen, you are honored, and you are heroes. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to all the SGU veterans and families who are here. And thank you to my colleagues.
The Senate will come to order. Continuing on special orders, Senate File 3295, number 64 on general orders. Senator Wiklund.
Thank you, Madam President. I have to present today Senate File 3295. This is the Health and Human Services Omnibus Policy Bill. In even years, as in other even years, many of the agencies bring forward policy provisions that they would like to see us advance and turn into legislation. And this bill is one that contains provisions from multiple agencies, from the Department of Health, Department of Human Services, Department of Children, Youth, and Families, as well as a couple of the health professional licensing boards. The bill includes provisions that are making technical and clarifying changes. They are provisions to clean up statute and remove obsolete and outdated language. There are policy changes that improve how programs work. And some are improving transparency by adding reporting requirements. We are making some changes to statute to bring it into alignment with federal requirements. So there are diverse provisions that are included in the bill. And there are also a few provisions that were brought forward as bills by members of this body. Members, you have on your desk an index. This goes through the articles and lets you know the bill source and the author of that bill. There are 9 articles. I will not go through all 9 articles. There are articles relating to health-related occupations, the Department of Health, and then there are several that relate to areas within the Department of Human Services, the Healthcare Administration, behavioral health, and the Housing and Support Services Administration, the Office of Inspector General, the Department of Children, Youth, and Families article. Then there are a couple policies from the MNsure, and then a miscellaneous article at the end. So members, there are explanations or short explanations of the provisions in the index, and I will be happy to talk more about them if you have questions. First, though, I would like to offer, I do have an author's floor amendment that is the A18 amendment. I'd like to offer that.
Senator Wiklund offers the A18 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment. Be here shortly, Senator Wiklund. Do you want to speak to it while we wait?
Sure, yes, I can begin describing. This amendment does make some changes that are technical changes that Council has found, like adding an effective date. In the Board of Chiropractic Examiners area, it does some clarification and fixes a cross-reference. It also corrects and removes an unnecessary paragraph. It makes a technical correction to the definition of pricing unit. It clarifies the Department of Health's posting requirement for prescription drugs of substantial public interest. It clarifies a provision relating to standalone dental plans. It clarifies what results housing support providers must provide to the Commissioner of Human Services. And then one that is removes a section of the bill. It removes the repeal of a couple of reports. The Department of Human Services brought forward a request to repeal 2 reports. And by my assessment and consulting with other members, we do not wish to repeal these reports. We feel they are important to continue. So this the language removes that repeal. And then there are two areas of the, or two lines that remove sections of the bill that are related to background studies. And those are being removed because we did not have an opportunity to get the language through the Judiciary Committee hearing before this. So we want to take those out because they haven't been heard in the Judiciary Committee. So that's a general description of the bill.
Secretary will report the A18.
Senator Wiklund moves to amend Senate File Number 3295 as follows. Page 7 after line 20, insert. This is the A18 amendment.
Discussion on the A18 amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The amendment is adopted. Further discussion on the bill as amended. Senator Bolden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would offer the A13.
Senator Bolden offers the A13 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Bolden moves to amend Senate File Number 3295 as follows. Page 140 after line 23, insert. This is the A13 amendment.
Senator Bolden.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment includes technical assistance from DCYF in addition to recommendation from advocates to support young people in foster care as they enter into extended foster care and shape their launch into young adulthood. This language does three main things. It requires that children in foster care who are 14 and older complete an independent living plan to support planning and consideration with a young person for their future. It allows young people who are eligible for disability supports to choose to remain in extended foster care if they prefer, clarifies the extended school time as part of disability supports, sustains eligibility for extended foster care, and adds Minnesota paid leave as an eligible activity for youth in extended foster care. And lastly, it adds some additional accountability, requiring that when a young person is terminated from foster care, that the DCYF commissioner also receives notification. So it just clarifies, adds that technical assistance from DCYF, Mr. President. And would ask for a yes vote and a roll call.
Roll call requested and granted. Further discussion on the A13. Senator Wiklund.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would see this as a friendly amendment. This is a bill or bill language that was heard in committee, but there were still some issues to work out, and so we did not bring it forward in the policy omnibus. And so with that work done with the department, I'm comfortable adding it to the bill.
Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Oh, sorry, that's kind of loud. Thank you, Mr. President. This is a group that is facing many challenges. I think the amendment is worthy, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment. Secretary will take the roll. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report that Senator Carlson votes yes,
Senator Carlson votes aye.
and that Senator Champion votes yes,
Senator Champion votes aye.
and Senator Pappas votes yes,
Senator Pappas votes aye.
and Senator Pa votes yes,
Senator Pa votes aye.
Senator Herr votes yes,
Senator Herr votes aye.
and Senator Zhang votes yes.
Senator Zhang votes aye. Senator Friends.
Mr. President, Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no.
And Senator Heinzman votes no.
Senator Heinzman votes no. All members having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 50 aye votes, 13 nay votes, the amendment is adopted. Further discussion or amendments on the bill as amended, Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'd like to offer the A17 amendment.
Senator Gruenhagen offers the A17 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Gruenhagen moves to amend Senate File Number 3295 as follows. Page 147, delete Section 1 and insert. This is the A17 amendment.
Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Members, in the bill on page 147, we're removing the random testing of convicted drug offense. And I think that's a step in the wrong direction for people who are on welfare benefits. This would affect the MFIP benefits only. And what would happen is if they tested positive for the use of illegal drugs, their MFIP benefits would be suspended for a period of 12 months, at the end of which they could reapply to have those benefits if they stayed clean from illegal drugs. Members, you know, I don't do this amendment lightly. As most of you know, I did 13 years of jail ministry. Wasn't in jail, but I did jail ministry. And one of the things you see there is the human exhaust of addiction, okay? Whether it's illegal drugs or other types of addictions, pornography, gambling, and I could go on. And what happens to an individual, men or women, when they become addicted, they lose their ability to say no and make a choice. They're compelled. They will do anything, legal or illegal, to feed that addiction. Creates bankruptcy. And just to give you a recent example, I had a customer in my insurance agency for over 30 years. He's a very successful businessman. And my wife had a chance to talk to his wife about a week ago. And we found out, to our surprise, because he's never had a problem like this, that he was in a county jail. So my wife asked, well, what happened? Because they not only had been customers for 30 years, they had been good friends. Well, she said he was using synthetic marijuana. And he started acting irrationally, and he started threatening her physically to do her harm, to the point where she had to call law enforcement. So now he's sitting in a county jail. And she said that he just was selling some of his property, raising money any way he could, selling miscellaneous things to buy this marijuana, which we legalized here in this chamber, and the governor signed. And that's what happens with addiction. So, members, we need to help these people. Many of them, when I did jail ministry, they admitted that they wouldn't have done what they did illegally and been in prison if they weren't on illegal drugs, to create a mindset to justify actions which they probably wouldn't do. So this idea, now this isn't the only thing that would help them, but the idea that they could lose financial benefits and be randomly tested for illegal drug use, and that it affects those benefits, I think it just sends a message to them to take a direction of staying clean, being law-abiding, and getting out of the addiction cycle that destroys so many human lives. And it just doesn't destroy their life, it affects their family, their children, and a host of other areas in our society, including our current prison population. So I hope that Senator Wiklund would see this as a friendly amendment, but I would ask her to yield and hear her perspective.
Senator Wiklund will yield. Senator Wiklund.
Mr. President, Senator, I will oppose the amendment. We had a lot of discussion in our committee about this bill when it was brought forward, and I and heard very powerful testimony about how having this random drug test provision was not helpful, and that it actually what could be in some cases was harmful for a person to be able to get access to help and to continue through their journey to recovery. So I am opposed to the amendment, and I ask for a roll call.
Roll call is granted. Senator Gruenhagen.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. You know, in my extended family, and I'm sure many of you have dealt with people who've had addictions that have affected them very negatively. And most of them, in my experience, initially don't want help to break the addiction. I'm fine. You know, I happen to have a relative who went to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the things they do for those, and some of you probably have attended, is at each meeting you have to get up and say, I'm an alcoholic, and you have to admit that. Because what AA has found out, until you admit you have a problem, you can't receive help. This is a way to bring some accountability to people who are on government programs for the use of illegal drugs and addiction. So members, I would urge you to vote green. Let's add this to the bill, and they can have a discussion about it in conference committee. Please vote green.
Senator Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to this amendment. The good senator from McLeod County did highlight that there are many things that need to go into play to help someone in addiction. Removing this helps remove one of those exhaust points, the exhaust point of hunger, the exhaust point of when you are exhausted and you need food, you're more likely to be driven to drugs. By taking this away and taking away then the access to food, you are more likely putting people in danger of recidivism and going back to drugs. So that's the point of this. By ensuring that people have consistent access to food in all realms, including these benefits, ensures that we help people stay off of drugs. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Frantz. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, members, I urge your support of the Gruenhagen amendment and to help ensure our welfare benefits are there for the right reason, as a helpful hand and not a opportunity to continue a drug habit at the taxpayer's expense. So, members, we have lots of fraud going on in this state. The idea of fraud is money from the taxpayers being used for unintended purposes. And so this bill goes the wrong direction and gets rid of drug testing. Folks, we should not be handing out taxpayer money on welfare for people to continue a drug habit at the taxpayer's expense. That is what we are voting on here today. If we don't adopt this amendment and let the bill go through as it is, it will get rid of drug testing, turn our head the other way, and let people that don't pass the drug test, that are continuing their habit that we all know is bad for them, and it should not be supported by taxpayer dollars. This is a very reasonable amendment. It just says we aren't going to give you cash and welfare benefits if you're using it to buy drugs. Really? We can't pass this common sense amendment on the Senate floor because the Democrats oppose that? That's what we're hearing. We all want welfare to be used for the reason it is, as a temporary crutch, not a permanent lifestyle. And if people that are abusing drugs fail future drug tests because they're continuing to siphon money off that should be used for housing and imperative things in their life to get back on their feet, are rather using it for drug purchases, we don't need the taxpayers to be supporting that kind of habit. And that's what you're supporting if you vote against this amendment. So I urge a green vote. Let's have compassionate care. Let's not let fraudulent uses of welfare go unnoticed. And in fact, the underlying bill will weaken those drug tests and let more of that money be fraudulently used for drug purchases rather than what it's intended for. That's what you're really saying when you vote against this amendment. So members, let's stand up for the taxpayers. Let's stand up for those that are in need of this, that it goes for the right purpose and the intended purpose. And some tough love that says, no, we're not going to support your drug habit if you can't pass drug tests when you're on welfare benefits. It's that simple. They don't need to be using this money to shadily buying drugs and supporting habits that are going to kill them or be very detrimental to their lifestyle. They need to get off that habit. And certainly we don't need to compel the taxpayers to pay for that type of habit and behavior. And so that's what this amendment is addressing. I urge a green vote.
Further discussion on the A17 Gruenhagen amendment. Last speaker, Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just something else I'd say. If you know, I've had a number of experiences with this, both in extended family and, of course, just in terms of my association with people that have gone through addiction. And one of the things you find is those who have come clean from addiction, in the end, are always thankful for the people who helped them end their addiction. They aren't necessarily thankful initially. A lot of them resist to a certain degree, family members or friends who want to help them. But in the end, you are actually showing empathy and care about that person when you help them confront their addiction. And in the end, when they come clean, they'll be thankful for it. I have not run across one person in my experience that said, yeah, I wish I was still addicted, who has come clean. So let's do the right thing. Let's help these people stay away from this addiction. One additional comment, remember, when you're buying illegal drugs, who are you helping? The illegal drug pushers. And many of them sell doses to seriously kill people. That's what's happening. Look at the fentanyl crisis that came across in our country. So members, let's at least send a small message here that we want to help to keep them accountable and stay off the addiction of illegal drugs. Please vote green.
Secretary will take the roll on the A17. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Champion votes no.
Senator Champion votes no.
Senator Pa votes no.
Senator Pa votes no.
Senator Herr votes no.
Senator Herr votes no.
Senator Zhang votes no.
Senator Zhang votes no.
Senator Rest votes no.
Senator Rest votes no.
Senator Port votes no.
Senator Port votes no.
Senator Fateh votes no.
Senator Fateh votes no.
And Senator Putnam votes no.
Senator Putnam votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Liskey votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes aye. All senators having voted who desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 32 aye votes and 35 nay votes, the Amendment A17 is not adopted. Further discussion on the bill as amended. Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'll move the A14 amendment.
Senator Abler moves the A14 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Abler moves to amend Senate File 3295 as follows. Page 147 after line 21, insert. This is the A14 amendment.
And thank you, Mr. President. I'm presenting this on behalf of Senator Liskey, who went off to serve mankind in another venue. This is about direct primary care service agreements, and Mr. President, you might actually get a kick out of this. This is something that's available in 34 states right now, that instead of relying on big health to decide who you're going to get to, you actually could go to your happy little local neighborhood doctor and set up an independent payment agreement with them and have much more flexibility and opportunities. Frankly, the way that healthcare is going, Mr. President, with the consolidations, and then they close things, and then they torture the various providers who are stuck going into these large groups. And Mr. President, I'm sure you have some experience with some of that. Not that working for your current employer would be anything resembling torture, but it's very painful as I talk to some of my medical colleagues that they feel that they're incapable of doing what they believe. I know one company that starts with an A has urged its doctors to go to 5 people an hour instead of 4 and continue to pay them chicken feed. And so I learned that while I was on a picket line with them. But anyway, so if we really want choice and flexibility, this is a program that will work. It's been done many places. Most of the opponents on the high level are the large groups that find that this would be undermining their near monopoly power in some of this. And so members, with that, I would ask for a yes vote, and Mr. President, Senator Liskey would request a roll call. Thank you.
Roll call is granted. Senator Wiklund.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have mixed feelings about this amendment. Senator Liskey did bring it to me this afternoon, and we talked about it a little bit, and so I was aware of it. And I think the concept of direct primary care is one that we should discuss and explore. And I have heard those who support this, bring forward some arguments about why it would be beneficial. I do think that it is something that we did not have a hearing on in my committee, and actually the bill language, although it isn't exactly like the amendment, but the bill was referred to the Commerce Committee for consideration and has not had a hearing in that committee. So I would have concerns about the details. It's a fairly lengthy amendment, and the details in this matter, because people will be signing up for coverage with this direct care program, and I think the details around what does the service cover are really important. And so, for example, one example is that there is a definition of what primary care services means, and it lists, there's 3 clauses where it goes into some detail about what is covered, but nobody, we in the Senate, we haven't had an opportunity to really discuss those items to make sure, are they including all the things that we would presume are necessary. There's also a lot of language about conduct of business and what is involved in the conduct of business. And that is something that isn't necessarily an HHS consideration for discussion, but I think it should be really thoroughly discussed in the Commerce Committee. And then just to raise awareness, I do think that it is really important for consumers to understand the limitations of a direct primary care agreement and make sure that people understand that this is not an insurance product, and if they choose to enter into this agreement with a clinic or a provider, they are purchasing one part of their health care coverage, but it is not going to cover things outside of the definition. And so if someone wants to do this, I think they need to be very fully informed that they will likely need some other form of health insurance to go along with it. And that is something that I think we should have more discussion about as well, the interactions between what coverage people have. So I'm not rising in strong opposition to it, but I do think that trying to bring this forward and get it passed this year really would leave a lot of members out of the process of being able to examine and make sure that these this language is fully vetted. So That's my opinion on that. Thanks.
Further discussion on the Abler A14 amendment. Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's interesting that we spent a lot more time talking about all kinds of other things on the floor. But Mr. President, you're fully aware that the topic of healthcare is extremely complex and not for the faint of heart sometimes, I guess, with all deference to the cardiologists. But so at some point, we're going to have to find a way to deal with, it's not even a donut hole, Mr. President, it's a chasm till you get to the point of your first dollar coverage. What this would provide would be a way for a person to keep their high deductible plan and at least now have a way to see a clinician without having to pay total cash, which is now what they're in, and they actually could get some continuity of care. There would be some transparency. There's actually quite a few safeguards where they disclose that it's not insurance and all of that, and I appreciate the soft no that maybe it's a hard maybe, Mr. President, that Senator Wiklund has, but it would be nice if this conversation could go forward. And if the amendment for some reason, Mr. President, doesn't succeed today, which I can't imagine that it wouldn't, but in the event it doesn't, I hope that this body can take it up in a way to try to address the issues that are with people. When people work for somebody and they have insurance, they say, oh good, I got insurance. And oh, it's $1,000 a month. I thought it would be cheaper. And I have a $5,000 deductible? Really? So we're $17,000 in their first dollar coverage. And they're very surprised by that. So they really don't have insurance. And so people are neglecting the ongoing care for their particular maladies. It could be blood pressure or whatever else that they would just really appreciate the primary care that they could receive from somebody who has chosen to go into this as one of their products. So, Mr. President, it would be nice if this could go on and be furtherly, is that a word? It could be further discussed in the conference process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Secretary will take the roll on the A14 amendment.
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. Are we still doing amendments? I thought we were on final reading.
Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to report that Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Champion votes no.
Senator Champion votes no.
Senator Pa votes no.
Senator Pa votes no.
Senator Herr votes no.
Senator Herr votes no.
Senator Zhang votes no.
Senator Zhang votes no.
Senator Rest votes no.
Senator Rest votes no.
Senator Port votes no.
Senator Port votes no.
Senator Fateh votes no.
Senator Fateh votes no.
Senator Putnam votes no.
Senator Putnam votes no.
And Senator Kunish votes no.
Senator Kunish votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Liskey votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes aye. The Secretary will close the roll, all senators having voted with the desire to vote. There being 35 aye votes and 32 nay votes, the A14 amendment is adopted. Further discussion or amendments on the bill? Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for that. I should bring more Liskey amendments to the floor. Appreciate the discussion there. I'd like to move the A19, Mr. President.
Senator Abler moves the A19 amendment. The Secretary will report the amendment.
Senator Abler moves to amend Senate File Number 3295 as follows. Page 57, after line 6, insert. This is the A19 amendment.
Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment, or one extremely similar to it, passed in 2024 on this very same bill. This is about access to hospital care. If you have been tracking anything, there's been, again, this is all about but the previous one is about access and opportunity. This is about having a hospital to go to with needs you might have. This says if a hospital is considering closing a wing or closing the hospital altogether, that the Department of Health would weigh in and go like, we believe this is satisfactory in the realm of public need, and that we agree that there's going to be sufficient services around. That would be true of most of the metro hospitals, except in one case, a local hospital closed a pediatric overnight wing without any plans, in Coon Rapids, without any plans to replace it. The process that exists now, if they want to do that, or close the entire hospital in Fairmont or wherever they have a little hospital, you simply have to have a meeting. And so when Unity went through some downsizing, it's pretty much gutted. There's hardly much left at Unity anymore. They had a meeting, and so we went, and there was great public objection to it. And we were, politely informed by the administration that they were taking input until tomorrow at midnight on this. And so I was pretty grateful about that, and at which point they proceeded just to way downsize the services. And so, Mr. President, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we were worried about overbuilding of these sites, and there were many, many independent hospitals that were not part of a group. Right now, more and more groups are consolidating. Alina is going to consolidate with Sutter now as a national effort, which is maybe a good idea. They're going to bring $2 billion into the mix, which seems like a good idea, and there's more to be discussed about that. But as there's more and more consolidations, as a company is now more at risk with some of the costs, they are frequently closing the birth centers and other important care facilities, especially across greater Minnesota, and that worries me. And so what this amendment does, it simply, not simply, it requires that the Department of Health say, we think that's all right. And there's a concern, well, what if a hospital is going broke? Well, we're sorry about that, but hardly any independent hospitals are going broke. Or they're closing. It's the ones that are part of greater groups. And my view is that when you accept a hospital, clinic, et cetera, these are about hospitals, into your stable of facilities, you have a responsibility now. You took over the local one that worked so well that the people chipped in with their little contributions from their town to have, because they wanted their 4 beds or whatever to handle the need. And now these go away only because it's not economically feasible anymore. And so my opinion is when you take over this hospital from someplace and consolidate, you take on the responsibility. And so with that, Mr. President, I would appreciate people helping protect all this access across our state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Wiklund to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, this one, I know that Senator Abler has mentioned that it has been brought forward before, and actually he brought it forward in committee for discussion as well. I will be in opposition to this bill, I think, or to this amendment. I think that the idea that he is trying to address, I think, is a very important one, and we do need to find a way to better involve the public in hospital changes, and try and find a way to better understand how the public good of hospitals and the services they offer, how does that intersect with how they receive their funding, and how do we ensure that they're able to stay in business with these services in these communities, because they are important. So I think that is a broader discussion that we should have. But I think this amendment, it requires the Department of Health to provide a public interest review on the topics that are mentioned, curtailing operations or relocating or ceasing to offer. All of that, I think, is something that would require the Department of Health to do substantial work, and it's not something that can be done just as a policy change. So from the standpoint of this requiring resources, I'm opposed to adding it to this policy bill. I do think that the policy concept he's raising is a valid one. So thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment. Senator Kupek. Senator Kupek.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a roll call.
Roll call is granted. Further discussion. Secretary will take the roll. Senator Frantz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Champion votes no.
Senator Champion votes no.
Senator Pa votes no.
Senator Pa votes no.
Senator Herr votes no.
Senator Herr votes no.
Senator Xiong votes no.
Senator Zhang votes no.
Senator Rest votes no.
Senator Rest votes no.
Senator Port votes no.
Senator Port votes no.
Senator Fateh votes no.
Senator Fateh votes no.
Senator Putnam votes no.
Senator Putnam votes no.
And Senator Kunish votes no.
Senator Kunish votes no. Senator, Senator Frantz.
Mr. President, I did try to report Senator Zhang votes no on the A19, but I don't see it on the board. Senator Zhang votes no.
Senator Zhang votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Howell votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no. All senators having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 22 aye votes, 45 nay votes. The amendment is not adopted. Further discussion on the bill. Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 3295, a bill for an act relating to state government, modifying provisions relating to health-related occupations, the Department of Health, etc.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Utke.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, just wanted to mention a couple things that I appreciate seeing in the bill, things that we've worked on throughout the session, and one being the expansion in the bill for Regents Hospital, an 85-bed expansion. It'll take place over time, but it's a positive move for them as we work with all the challenges, et cetera, that we've been hearing about hospitals across our state. It's nice to have one that's actually wanting to add space and services, and so we truly look forward to watching that progress. The karma language is included, which helps bring our statutes in line with what was given to us through the court proceedings with our county operations and their inner workings with the Department of Human Services. And then the last thing is happy to see the two CCBHCs, the rebasing, a couple facilities that had gotten missed in previous legislation. And with that, you know, there's things in there. We see a lot of movements for licensing and approvals, whether it's something with mental health or chiropractors, and hopefully that'll, again, be a positive move for them too. So with that, I thank Senator Wiklund and others for working on this, and appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on the bill as amended. Closing comments from Senator Wiklund, none.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. President. I appreciate the discussion today, and again, I think these are provisions that either members have brought forward that are reasonable and beneficial, and also the agencies are able to take care of things to benefit people in our public programs and in our healthcare professions. So I urge you to vote green. Thanks.
Secretary will take the roll on final passage.
Senator Westland.
Mr. President, I report that Senator Carlson votes aye.
Carlson votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Putnam votes aye.
Senator Putnam votes aye.
Senator Kunesh votes aye.
Senator Kunesh votes aye.
Senator Gustafson votes aye.
Senator Gustafson votes aye.
And Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Champion votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Johnson votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
Howe votes no.
Senator Housley votes no.
Housley votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Liskey votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Rarick votes no.
Rarick votes no. All members having voted that desire to vote, Secretary will close the roll. There being 36 yea votes and 31 nay votes, the bill passes, and its title is agreed to. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I am honored and pleased to present Senate File 2971. Mr. President, members, this is a bill that takes a careful, data-driven, and compassionate approach to preventing suicide on bridges throughout Minnesota. But before I describe the bill itself, I would like to just acknowledge some important things. This effort did not begin in this chamber. It began with advocates, families, and loved ones, people who, unimaginable grief, chose to act so that others might be spared loss. To MJ Weiss, Kayla's mom, and to the community behind Kayla's Hope, the organization that she founded, Hope standing for helping others, protecting everyone, and the supporting organization that she reached out to, Save, Suicide Awareness, Voices of Education, and to so many others. We acknowledge their love, their persistence, and their courage to make this possible. They refused to accept that nothing could be done. They organized, they educated, and they made it impossible for us to not act. So, Mr. President, as we consider this bill today, we also hold in our hearts the memory of those we have lost. This legislation cannot undo that loss, but it can honor their lives and ensure that their legacy lives on in the lives we're able to save. Members, we know that suicide is often an impulsive act in a moment of acute crisis, and we also know clearly from evidence across the country and the world that physical barriers and thoughtful design saves lives. They create a pause, they create time, and that time can make all the difference. So Senate File 2971 establishes a statewide framework to incorporate those life-saving measures into how we design and rehabilitate our bridges. Briefly, the first element is data collection. MnDOT, the Department of Transportation, working with the Department of Health, is directed to identify bridges with a history of suicide-related deaths using verified data and maintain those records so we can make informed decisions. The agencies then develop a clear methodology, best practices for when and where suicide prevention measures should be used, along with design standards and best practices grounded in public health, expertise, and engineering judgment. And when a project includes railing work, and when it is determined to be appropriate and feasible, suicide reduction railings will be incorporated by the Department of Transportation and by local road authorities. Members, this bill does not require barriers everywhere. It does something more thoughtful. It ensures that when we have the opportunity, we act deliberately, guided by data, expertise, and care. At its core, this bill reflects a simple but profound responsibility that we bring to this office, to this chamber, to design our public spaces in a way that protects people in their most vulnerable moments. Infrastructure is not just about moving people from place to place. It is about taking care of people. So thank you, Mr. President. I will stand for questions, but I ask you for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Members, amendments, questions, comments to Senate File 2971.
Discussion. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Dibble, for bringing this bill forward. And I was first alerted to what was going on with the Washington Avenue Bridge a couple of years ago when I got a chance to meet Kayla's mother, MJ Weiss, and it was a heartbreaking story. And for those of you that don't know, Kayla lived in Shakopee. She was a Scott County resident and engaged with 2 children. This was a terrible, terrible loss, and one that was somewhat preventable. We know from studies that if we put up some barriers, if we make it more difficult for someone to die by suicide, that sometimes they'll rethink that decision. Had we had those measures up on the Washington Avenue Bridge, Kayla may be married to her fiance and her 2 children would still have their mother. And Senator Dibble, you're carrying this bill and bringing it forward today ensures what we've talked about with MJ, and that is to make sure that Kayla's loss is not in vain, that Kayla's loss inspires us to do something to prevent future losses, to prevent the loss of some other child's mother down the line. So members, I encourage a yes vote on this bill. I appreciate that we've named it the Kayla's Hope Act for all the hard work that her family has put into this, and to remember that this isn't just some anonymous law. This was a law that was inspired by Minnesota citizens working very hard, and to remember the loss of someone who is truly loved. Thank you.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Dibble, for bringing this bill. And thank you to Senator Pratt, what she said. It's beautiful. I think it's so important to just lift up that any barriers we can put in place saves lives. There have been studies done on people who have survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, and I think most 50% who have come forward say that the regret that they felt was instantaneous as their hands left the railing. They were saved by a net underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. And we hear that over and over again, that it's a split-second decision that often people make, and with lethal means becomes permanent, and anything we can put in place to slow that down and to make an instantaneous decision, not so instant that the action can't be instant, we will save lives. And so I'm so, so grateful for this bill because it is so important that we do whatever we can in the way that we construct our lives, whether it's in our communities or whether it's bridges and roads and Department of Transportation, to put those literal barriers in place so we can keep Minnesotans alive. Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam President.
Further discussion? Oh, Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Madam President. Would Senator Dibble yield?
Senator Dibble will yield. He does. Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Dibble, I'm just looking on page 2, lines 4 and 5. It says the railings must be implemented when determined appropriate and feasible, kind of like a third person way to structure that sentence. I'm just wondering who would make that determination.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. That determination is made in a collaboration, consultation that occurs between the Department of Transportation and the Department of Health. And I think there's actually when we use the words appropriate and feasible, I think there are a number of decision points that go in, but I think part of what we're trying to get to is, instead of directing the Department of Transportation or local road authorities to run around and amend and make changes to all of the existing railings around the state, when there's an opportunity through a rehabilitation that's being scheduled and that's occurring already, or a new bridge, of course, that's being constructed. That would be the feasibility part. And the aspects of the design, that's through research and best practices that are available widely. Thank you.
Further discussion of Senate File 2971. Seeing none, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 2971, a bill for an act relating to transportation requiring data collection on bridge-related suicides.
Third reading. Further discussion. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very quickly, I wanted to acknowledge and thank my co-authors, Senators Coleman and John Stewart. Thank Senator Pratt for his beautiful words and his support as well as everyone else, Senator McQuaid and others who spoke in favor. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Anyone else? Then Secretary will take the roll. Senator Friends.
Thank you, Madam President. I report that Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Xiong votes yes.
Senator Xiong votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Putnam votes aye.
Senator Putnam votes aye.
Senator Klein votes aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last name.
Senator Klein votes
Senator
aye.
Klein votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Howell votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes aye.
Senator Rarick votes aye.
Senator Rarick votes aye.
Madam President, we're waiting on one more. Madam President, Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. The Secretary will close the roll. There being 63 ayes and 4 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The last bill on on special orders is Senate File 4244, number 88 on general orders. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate File 4244 is affectionately known as the Revisor's Bill. This is an annual bill that generally corrects technical errors in statutes and laws. For example, it corrects erroneous or incomplete cross-references and internal references. It corrects grammatical errors, miscellaneous drafting, engrossing, and other errors. We noticed in committee that it not only addresses recent errors, but also the Revisor's Office finds errors whenever they can, sometimes going back for years. The bill is getting larger and larger every year. We're now up to 220 pages, and I think we need to make send special gratitude and thanks to the Revisor's Office. We rarely thank them for all the hard work they do, and this year especially, since I and will be leaving at the end of this session, I want to personally thank those that work on this bill. The Revisor's office is tremendously talented, and we're very grateful for their work. I'll stand for any questions. Maybe I shouldn't stand for any questions.
Is there a discussion on the bill? Senator Latz.
Mr. President, we're glad to support Senator Limmer's reelection bill again this year. It's a good bill. Please vote for it.
Further discussion? Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Madam President. I wonder if Senator Limmer would yield for a question.
Senator Limmer, will you yield? Senator Limmer yields. Senator Miller.
Senator Limmer, can you please provide a little bit more detail on Section 6, Subdivision 7 of the bill?
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Madam President. Would Senator Miller give me the page and line, please?
Senator Miller withdraws his request. Further discussion? Seeing none, the Secretary will give Senate File 4244 its third reading.
Senate File Number 4244, a bill for an act relating to legislative enactments making miscellaneous technical corrections.
Further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary will take the roll on Senate File 4244. Senator Frantz.
Thank you, Madam President. I report Senator Carlson votes yes.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Champion votes yes.
Senator Champion votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes yes.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Port votes yes.
Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Putnam votes aye.
Senator Putnam votes aye.
And Senator Klein votes aye.
Senator Klein votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Howe votes aye.
Senator Howell votes aye.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Liskey votes no.
Senator Rarick votes aye.
Senator Rarick votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Senator Westrom votes aye. Senator Frantz, do you intend to vote? Senator Frantz, do you intend to vote? Senator Jasinski, are we waiting? Senator Jasinski. Okay. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Utke votes aye.
Senator Utke votes aye. All members having voted, and there being 63 ayes and 4 noes, the bill is passed in its title agreed to. We move now to the 13th order of business, announcements of Senate interests. Following members without objection are excused from today's session. Senator Coran and Nelson from 1255 to 105, Senator Weber from 140 to 150. Senator Bolden.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I would remind you that you are invited to Coffee with the Council in my office from 3 to 4 today to meet members of the Rare Disease Advisory Council. I hope to see you there.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, members, the Transportation Committee will be meeting at 3 o'clock, so about a little less than 15 minutes in room 1100 of the Senate building. Please be on time. We have a lot of people who have come from around the state to present their community's priorities and projects. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Finance Committee will meet in room G15 at 3:15 today.
Any other announcements of Senate interest? Senator Lads.
Madam President, it is of note to the Senate, of interest to the Senate, that this, I expect, was Senator Limmer's final chief authorship of a bill that will pass the legislature after 38 years of service in this body. And I want to express my gratitude for that service and for his hard work representing his constituents.
Thank you, Senator Latz. Any other announcements of Senate interest? Seeing none, Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate do now adjourn until Thursday, April 23rd at 11 a.m.
On the motion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is now adjourned.